black and you live in Israel? How do they treat black people over there? Like, aren't they all racist? Because in people's mind, they think Israel is like this white dominant country, and they hear that, you know, Israel doesn't treat refugees well from Africa, and they see, you know, news clips that say Israel's trying to kick out all Africans, and so they automatically think Israel is racist. The left has been so good at convincing African Americans that Palestinians have our same narrative. Arabs have a certain mentality. The reason why it's so hard to reach peace with them is because they don't want peace. Hi, my name is Ashira Solomon. I'm a political commentator, and I'm the co-host of a show called The Quad.
And I am so happy that you're here. We met over in Jerusalem.
Yes, I had you on my show, and so now I'm here in LA, and you have me on your show. It's so nice.
It's all full circle.
Yep.
So tell us just a little bit more about you. Why did you move to Israel?
So this is my third time living in Israel. The first time I moved to Israel was 2016, and then I was back in 2019, and then I moved again 2022 permanently. So I'm not coming back here, unfortunately, but only to visit. The first time I went to Israel is because my grandmother, it was her dream to go to Israel. She died at 48 years old, and none of her children went to Israel. And I grew up with the story of like knowing that she wanted to go to Israel. So when I got to university, I was like, you know, I want to go study abroad in Israel. So that was my study abroad experience in 2016. And as soon as I landed, I felt like I was at home.
Wow.
And I remember you saying when you went to Israel, you also felt that same feeling.
I did. You know, when I was in Jerusalem, particularly, I was at the Shuk.
Yeah.
And I have a picture of it that I've never posted because I look so goofy in that photo because I'm smiling so big because I just felt like I was at home.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I was meant to be here. I felt like just so welcomed in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's ironic because so many people have this mentality that there are not Black people who are thriving in Israel. And I'm looking at you, I'm like, you're a Black woman.
Yep.
You're Jewish.
Yep.
You live in Israel.
Yep.
Do people even know that you exist?
So it's funny. I think here in America, like, they faintly know about Ethiopian Jewry, and then like Black American Jews, absolutely not. Like when I come back, you know, to visit, they're like, you're Black and you live in Israel? How do they treat Black people over there? Like, aren't they all racist? Because in people's mind, they think Israel is like this white dominant country, and they hear that, you know, Israel doesn't treat refugees well from Africa, and they see, you know, news clips that say Israel's trying to kick out all Africans, and so they automatically think Israel is racist. But I thrive in Israel. Like you said, I live in Jerusalem as well. I feel so welcomed. I don't walk around thinking, oh my goodness, I'm Black, and, you know, they're going to treat me differently or stare at me or anything like that. Like, I feel completely at home, comfortable. And really, what people don't know is everyone gets treated equally good and bad in Israel. Like the Russians, the Blacks, the Moroccans, like everyone has a stereotype against every group, and we all come together, we love each other, and then we talk about each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that's such a good point too, because I think about it when people are like, oh, well, this Israeli person says something. I'm like, you're telling me there's not ignorant people in America? Are we going to sit here and pretend like every single person here is a saint?
Yes. I always like to say, listen, racism exists everywhere. It's not some new phenomenon. So of course, I'm sure racism exists in Israel. Does it affect my day-to-day? Does it affect my work life? Does it affect when I go to the Shuk and go shopping? Absolutely not. Are people throwing rocks at me? Are people not accepting my money? Are there signs that say no Blacks? You know what I mean? No, like it doesn't exist. Maybe there is some person in Israel who doesn't like Black people, but don't we have that in America? Don't you have that all over Europe? Don't you have it in Africa? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's not some phenomenon that racism is in Israel.
So is there any segregation at all in Israel?
No, there's no segregation. We don't have apartheid. I have Arab drivers. There's not buses for the Blacks or buses for the Arabs, buses for the Muslims, buses for the Jews. You've been there. When you went to the airport, you didn't see bathrooms for the Jews and bathrooms for the Muslims. We're all living together as one. There's 2 million Arab Israeli citizens. I think that's important to say because people don't even know that there's an Israeli Arab. You know, they're not Jews. They're right. Muslims or Christians, and they're Arabs, and they're citizens of Israel. So yeah, we're completely diverse in Israel, and we're together.
So yeah, I love that you have such a great experience living there, because people kept asking me like, you ever see yourself moving out here? I'm like, you never know, because I never thought I'd end up in LA.
Right.
And you know what was interesting is going to Israel at the time that I did, 100 days after October 7th, still in the middle of a war. I was nervous, and I talked to our CEO here who spent a lot of time in Israel and just asked her what she thought about the safety. She looked me right in the eye and said, honestly, and she wasn't even joking. She said, honestly, you're safer in Israel right now than you are in Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Xavier, I walk around Jerusalem at 2, 3 in the morning by myself.
Really?
Yes, I'm never scared to go anywhere in Jerusalem. I would never, even in the best neighborhoods. We talked about Livermore. You live there. I'm from there. You know, Livermore is a very safe city. I would never walk around Livermore at 1, 2, 3 in the morning by myself.
Right.
Anywhere in California, anywhere in the States. Jerusalem's completely safe. Now, some pockets of Tel Aviv, I don't think I would, I don't know if I would walk around, you know, but in Jerusalem for sure. Like, it's completely safe. And to circle back to saying, would you live in Israel? One of the things I love about living in Israel is it reminds you of what is important. It returns you back to your humanity and simplicity. When I'm in Israel, I think more about family and less about my career. I think less about materialism. I think about what it is my soul actually needs in this life, what it is God created us for and what we're purposed to do. And when I'm in America, I think about getting to the bag. I think about materialism. I think about, I want that big mansion in Beverly Hills. You know what I mean? I don't think about family and what's actually important. So Israel is a place where it returns you back to yourself, your true self.
Those inherent conservative values.
Yes, exactly.
What do you think creates that type of culture? Like, why do you think that people are so traditional there?
I think because, like, listen, obviously the main religion in Israel is Judaism. Everyone is not religious. Actually, the society is more secular than it is religious. However, they are very rooted in that first commandment that was given not just to the Jews, but to all of humanity, which is be fruitful and multiply. So everyone knows in the back of their head, even if it's the guy in Tel Aviv parting his crazy head off all the time, everyone knows at some point I have to start a family. You know, everyone knows that I have to get married, I need to have children, and they know that's the center of life. And so I think that's why it stays traditional, because they put an emphasis on family and not an emphasis on work. Also, look at the region they're in. Life is very cheap in the Middle East. Life can be gone like this. We've seen what happened on October 7th. So I think that they value life a lot more than we value life, because there's always a threat to their life. So they live a lot more in the moment. They don't plan anything, which is kind of hard for me. Like, they don't plan out anything. Everything is in the moment, and they live life without fear. Like, they really, when we say let's live life to the fullest, they're really living life to the fullest, because they don't know if they're gonna have a tomorrow. They have enemies on all sides.
Wow, that's just profound to even think about. And you really sense that in the culture there. Like, everyone is just so in the moment, and even just being on their phones less. Like, that's something that I noticed when I was out there too. People were actually engaging with each other. They know how to maintain eye contact, have a conversation. Here, especially with like Gen Z, it is so difficult to have like a conversation that's more than 20 seconds, because people's attention spans are so short, and they're always focused on the next thing, the material things, being these girl bosses even. And it's so interesting that you bring up that point, because I think of the Black women who I've met that live in Israel and just how different their perspective is than, and not even just Black, but just the women in general here in America.
I'm glad you touched on the women and the girl boss. I do want to touch on that with feminism. It's a lot different in Israel. There was some data that came out about women who work and have children. So in Israel, the higher the education you have as a woman, they still have the average amount of children. In America, if you have higher education, a master's or a PhD, the amount of children you have declines. So you don't keep up with like the average for the country. So then we say, well, wait, these women have education and they're working and they're still producing in terms of birthing out children. So why doesn't that happen in America? And I think it's because, again, it goes back to the culture. They believe in having children. They believe in creating families. And they're saying, like, listen, we want to be educated. We want to, work. We want to give into the world, but we understand that family is first.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. And that's one of the big things that we're missing here is people are afraid of the idea of having children. I think that we've demoralized everything about our society.
Yeah.
Like, people are afraid to start families. They don't want to be parents, like, with whether it's through abortion and the birth control industry and all these different things. Like, everything is making the thought of having a child or being married or even a woman submitting to a man, like, those are all demonized in ways that 150 years ago, or not even just 150, maybe 50 to 100 years ago.
50 years ago, right?
Completely different perspective. And I think that's why we've seen so many issues rise up in our society that we have now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just the rise of this toxic feminism, I'm not saying, women can't desire to have careers, but that we have sold this idea that you chasing after your career is going to be the most and only fulfilling thing in your life. And it's not true. And we see that women in America are not happier because they're CEOs or they've reached the height of heights in their careers. We all hit 30 and 32. I'm 32. I'm seeing it among my friends, and everyone wants a baby. We're all educated. We're all spent our 20s getting educated and, we're all crawling, the corporate ladder. But really, at the end of the day, we desire a family. We desire a husband. We desire to have children, because a career it cannot be the only thing that fulfills you. At the end of my life, I want to have my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren surrounding me. I don't care about having accolades and diplomas and achievements surrounding me when I'm going to die. I want to see an entire generation around me when I'm going to die.
That is so powerful. And one more thing, how would you say the education system is different in Israel versus how it is here in America?
So I can speak to when I studied at university there. One thing that I noticed was that the students were able to challenge the professors. So I'll give you an example. I had a class where we had a bunch of Zionists in the class. A woman who was a teacher, she was a professor. She was Jewish. However, she celebrated the Nakba. She didn't believe that Israel was a democratic state. She believed that the state does actually belong to the Palestinians. But, they had a bunch of Zionists, and they would go at it. I mean, fighting, just like challenging her. She's challenging them back. They would be yelling in the classroom. And then afterward, everyone would be like, let's go to Aroma Cafe and have a coffee. And it was just like, yeah, we had our fight, we had our debate, but like we can still be friends. Here, when I was in class, I remember people being like, Trump got elected, I can't go home for Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? Or like, oh my goodness, I can't be your friend if you voted for Trump. And there, they really argue, they really pull each other apart, but they're still friends afterwards. There's a real connection, a real friendship afterwards. Politics doesn't get in the way. And I really like that. I remember writing some of my papers, in college in favor of what I knew my teacher would want to hear, just so I could pass and get along. But there, you really felt like, no, use your voice and fight. Fight for what you stand up for, and the professor can fight for what they stand for, and it's fine. You have freedom to do that.
I love that. I wish it was more like that here. I have to give a shout out to one of our contributors, Alexis Wilkins. A story she told me that I will never forget is that when she was in college, she had this really woke professor, and she knew she had to write a paper. So she wrote 2 different versions of the paper, and she went to the professor and said, this is the version that I know you will give me an A for, and this is the version that's what I actually believe. And I thought that was so powerful. Yeah. And, it's a lot more work, but sometimes if you need to stand on principle, you have to do that extra work. Yeah. And that professor, I can't remember the exact outcome of it, but obviously was not the most thrilled at it. But at the end of the day, it's like you have to respect that. Yeah. Especially because I'm sure that professor looked at the paper and was like, you're not wrong. Like, I ended up loving this version of it. But, I do wish that we in America could get back to being able to agree to disagree, to be able to...
And that be genuine. That actually be genuine, that I agree to disagree. Yeah. Because in America, I think we say that, but then behind closed doors, we're like, oh yeah, Xavier, we're not inviting them to dinner because we don't actually like you now that we know how you think. That's what Israelis say about us. Like, we're fake polite. You know what I mean? Like, Israelis are very rude, but they're actually kind. because they'll help you. They'll listen to you. Whatever you need, they'll give you the shirt off their back. It's not a fake polite. So it comes off a little strong that, they're knocking you down in the street in the rude, but they'll actually give you the food off their plate.
Yeah.
In America, we're like, hi, oh, great, how are you? Oh, bye. Like, we don't actually show up for each other in the way that we should be showing up for each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. One of the things I notice out there is no one uses the word sliha. No, which means excuse me in Israel.
No.
And the shook, I was fighting for my life trying to get through there sometimes, but...
No, you just gotta like elbow, push.
Right.
And you gotta get really used to just pushing your way through the line. They'll cut you. They're just completely rude.
Yeah.
But in the heart, they love you. Like, they actually love you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's no politeness or, what's the word I'm looking for? Manners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the things people kept warning me about out there. And the first time I went, I was caught off guard. But like after 10 days there, like I really got the hang of it. Going there the second time, I was ready. Yeah. I was putting that shoulder into the crowd. Like I was getting where I needed to be.
And no one was offended that you was, throwing those shoulders.
Now, if it were a racist country, like people say, when I was barging through and not saying sliha, then they would have had something to say. But they're like, oh no, he's Israeli.
Exactly. They almost respect you. They're like, oh, okay, good. You can come now.
Right.
You're tough.
Right. I'm surprised they don't have like the top rugby team in the world.
Right. It's because they're still small at the end of the day.
Yeah, I went to that Jewish Sports Hall of Fame, and it was a very quick in and out trip.
Yeah. It wasn't a lot.
No shade. I love the Jewish community, but there was not a lot to show in that Hall of Fame.
That's why they need to take in more Black Americans. And, we need to mix in the genetics there.
Right.
And, get some big people in there.
Just do what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so funny. I said last question earlier, but I actually have so much more for you.
Okay.
One thing I want to bring up is why do you think that so many Black Americans think that they should be supporting Palestinians rather than Israelis?
Wow. So we both know it's propaganda, but what it really is that the left has been so good at convincing African Americans that Palestinians have our same narrative. And we as Black people, we have a beautiful culture. We have a beautiful history in America. We fought for our civil rights in this country. We helped build this country in so many ways, and we did it through the mechanism of peace. And we as Black Americans are very sensitive to oppression. We're very sensitive to apartheid. We're very sensitive to terms like slavery. We're very sensitive to terms like colonialism. So when you start using those buzzwords in our community, we want to go and fight for the underdog because we have always felt like we were the underdogs. And so they have successively convinced us that they are oppressed just like us. And now you see us, Black people, supporting terrorism. We didn't never commit terrorism in America to get our freedoms. How are we like them? And their story is nothing like our story. There's no way, and I don't want to do Oppression Olympics because it's not about Oppression Olympics, but there's no way anyone can say that the Palestinians' plight was worse than the African Americans' plight. It just wasn't. You guys were not taken from the west coast of Africa, brought over here, been slaves, fighting for your rights, defined as 3/4 of the person, nothing. So if we can go through all of that and not use the mechanism of terrorism, start cutting up white people's children and burning up white people and all of these things, and we have bombs dropped on us and all of these things, and still push forward with peace and really fight and teach ourselves how to read, teach ourselves how to write, teach ourselves business and be successful, and then you're going to compare me to a terrorist? It's ludicrous. It's disrespectful. And then to see Black people support that. I'm so personally offended when I think about my grandparents, my great-grandparents, people who came before us who actually had to fight for Jim Crow and all of these things, had to get through all of these obstacles just for us to be compared to a group who is literally committing terrorism. They're terrorizing the Jews. And then to say, oh yeah, support us because we're just alike.
Between the Black community and the Jewish community, it's really hard to say who's been lied about more and who's been lied to more because propaganda has been weaponized on us for so long. Yeah. And again, I feel like the theme is demoralization. Yeah. I think back to our grandparents and the era that they grew up in and the grit that they had, the tenacity that they had. They wanted to have a strong family unit. And they, like you said, even going further back with our ancestors, it's like they were teaching each other how to read. They were starting businesses when really they weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
They were so determined to be successful. But now in America, it's like all this opportunity is sitting right there in front of us. Instead of taking advantage of it, we'd rather sit there and complain about what our ancestors went through.
You know, I had a woman on our show, and she said something so powerful, and it stuck with me. She said, as Jewish people, we were taught, because God brought us out of Egypt, because we were once slaves, we now have a duty to help the poor, help the widow, help the oppressed, because we were slaves. Not we are now entitled to XYZ because we were slaves. No, we now have a duty to rise up and protect others. And here in America, Black people almost have an entitlement. Because we were slavery, because all of these things happened to us, you must give us this now. We demand that we have this. You must make it easier for us. You must give us all these concessions. But we should actually be standing up and saying, no, because we know we were slaves at one point in this country, because we had to overcome, because we were resilient, now we're going to go and take our strength of our culture, of our people, and we're going to go help others. But we have like this entitlement spirit. I think all Americans have an entitlement spirit, not just Black Americans. But come on, really? It's 2024. We have it bad in 2024. Right. I mean, our ancestors built a whole Black Wall Street. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that goes back to the Gaza thing. We gave up Gaza in 2005. Israel left Gaza. They could have turned Gaza into Dubai, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't. They built tunnels, they oppressed their own people, and that's what you have in Gaza right now. When Black people were being oppressed, we pushed through and we built a whole Black Wall Street. Mm-hmm. Like, what?
Right.
We have successful Black people. We have millionaires, we have billionaires. There's no excuse. We all have the opportunity to be successful.
I learned recently that there are about 2 million Black millionaires here in America.
Wow.
Isn't that profound?
Yeah.
And yet people try to say that we're oppressed in this country. I guarantee you a lot of them are self-made. Yeah. So if it's an option for so many of these Black people, why wouldn't it have been an option for the rest of us? Yeah. And again, it just shows like we should not be compared to Palestinians. We should not be even categorized as them, because I feel like you are categorizing us with Hamas in that case.
You are.
These people who, I look at Hamas and I'm pretty sure the leader of Hamas is richer than Donald Trump, Beyonce, and Jay-Z combined.
Yeah, he has billions living in Qatar.
Yeah.
Billions.
And yet, if anybody is oppressing the Palestinians, it's their own government that they have elected. Right. They have chosen this path, and we're supposed to be shocked that they're struggling in their situation out there when they have taken the water pipes and turned them into these ghetto missiles that don't make it anywhere.
Right.
They are burning down their own resources that the Israelis left them because they have too much pride to utilize them. So I don't understand how we are being compared at all, because not only are our situations not similar, but we just do not have the same mentality. No. Black people fought with peace. Black people fought with prosperity and building our businesses and proving that we were worthy of equality, and we fought for that, and we have that now. The Palestinians choose violence every single time.
Every single time.
Every time there's a ceasefire, you know what ends that ceasefire? Them attacking Israelis.
Exactly.
So
right.
We are not the same. Nothing about us is fundamentally the same. So I don't like that comparison, and I blame groups like Black Lives Matter, because if they had the same comfortability here as Hamas has over in Israel, I'm pretty sure Black Lives Matter would be raining down terrorism on white people here in America.
Oh, absolutely.
Just to push that narrative.
Absolutely.
It's the Marxism that is polluting these people's brains.
Absolutely. And just to circle back to about Palestinians, people always comment and say, well, not all Palestinians. Well, certainly not all Palestinians, right. But 70% of Palestinians support Hamas. Mm-hmm. They support October 7th. You and I watched the 47-minute IDF film together in New York. Yes. What did you see? We seen them laughing and having glee over the bodies as they cut someone's head off. Mm-hmm. They were calling their parents saying, Abu, Abu, father, father, I killed a Yehudi, I killed a Jew. And the father was saying, oh, Allah Akbar, praise God, praise God. We seen when they took the hostages into Gaza that everyone was celebrating and cheering. They were cheering. So I'm sorry that I have to go against this narrative that there's innocent Palestinians. I'm sure there's a few, but it's definitely not the majority.
That is so true. That is so true. And, you know, watching the 47 minutes of what happened on October 7th, one of the things that stuck out to me is how young these people were, because I didn't really know how to envision what a musty genocidal terrorist looks like. And what threw me off is that so many of these people, they were younger than me.
Yeah, they're like 20, 18.
They're, yeah, like 19, teenagers, 17. early 20s. Yeah. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Hamas was organized in 1988. They came into full power in 2005. So if you think about it, and plus, you know, the Palestinians are a very young population for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
So a majority of them have been raised, if not during the rise of Hamas, but after the rise of Hamas. So of course, with the fact that since 1988 in their charter, they have been committed to killing Jews and Christians, now you have that hateful ideology infiltrating their culture. They are raised to be hateful. And I'm not saying that every single person in Gaza is a hateful person, but it's safe to assume that a lot of them are.
It's more than safe to assume, because UNRWA, the UNRWA schools, we know that the teachers in those schools are Hamas terrorists. They're part of the Hamas organization. We know that in their school books that they teach death to America, death to Israel. This is how to kill Yehudi. They have jihad in there, calling their children to jihad. I read a quote from a mother that said, "My son died attacking a Jew." And she said, "My first instinct was to cry to Allah for my son. But then," she said, "then I stopped and I remembered what my son did. He was a martyr, and I went out and I gave chocolate to all his friends, and I gave candy, and I celebrated in the streets." And she said, "How dare I cry for my son, because what he did something great, and he did it in the name of God. And I'm proud." And that's a mother whose child just died because he's been taught all his life to be a martyr. And that's who we're dealing with. People don't understand the Arab mentality. People from the West, they don't understand. Arabs have a certain mentality. The reason why it's so hard to reach peace with them is because they don't want peace. They want to take over Israel. They don't want there to be a land of Israel. So we cannot make peace with a partner when there is no partner. The Arab mentality, all they understand is respect. That's it. So if we set back and we let them run us over, then that's all they're going to do. We have to fight, because we have to show them, no, you're going to respect us, number one. And number two, they have a mentality that wherever they go in the world, if they conquer that land is Muslim land. That land is their land forever. So in their minds, we can never exist. We can never exist together. We can never coexist. They don't have a coexisting mindset. Their mind is that we can only exist under jihad. We can only exist under Allah, being submissive to Islam. That's it. There is no coexistence in the Arab mind.
It's so ironic, because you think of the narratives that they have in America about what the Israelis are allegedly doing to the Palestinians, but if anything, it's the opposite. The Palestinians want to not even oppress Israelis, but wipe every single one of them out. Yeah. After all this time, it blows my mind that people don't even know what they really mean by from the river to the sea. They're talking about wiping out every single person in Israel. Yeah. And that's the side that you're supposed to stand with. And like you said, hatred it's very conscious. It's a decision. You know, peace is easier said than done, but hatred is a conscious choice. And the Palestinians are choosing hatred just about every single time.
I want everyone to understand that we are up against an ideology. We are up against an idea. This is an idea that's deep rooted in their minds, and it's harder to fight an idea. Why? Because ideas outlast human beings. Yeah. Wow. We can all die, but the ideas don't die. Mm-hmm. So we can kill a bunch of Hamas terrorists. Someone else will rise up. It's always going to be a constant fight. It's sad to say that, but it's always going to be a constant fight, because we're fighting an idea. Mm-hmm. And so until we can get more ideas of goodness and peace and have access to their children, Palestinians, and at least take out their curriculum and put in a new curriculum. I mean, I don't mean to be so, negative and down. I just don't see how we can move forward with peace when all of their education is completely forcing this idea of jihad. Mm-hmm. It's not forcing an idea of peace.
What do you think is the realistic best case scenario in this conflict between Israel and Hamas?
So between Israel and Hamas, I'm in full support of what Netanyahu said, that we need to completely take out Hamas. We need to completely take them out and then someone's going to have to rule over Gaza. I don't think it's going to be Israel. I don't know who it's going to be, if there's going to be some type of deal with Saudi Arabia. I don't know what's going to happen, but Hamas does have to be taken out. But the problem with that is Hamas is not the head of the snake. Iran is. So at some point, we have to fight Iran, or there needs to be an uprising in Iran. I don't know what's going to happen with Iran. But for now, Hamas needs to be taken out.
You know, that's an interesting point, too, because I've been saying for a while that Iran really is the mastermind of this. They're the ones funding this. They're the ones supporting it and doing so much of the research of how Hamas was even able to get so deep into Israel. And what I tell people, because they'll try to yell at me, be like, why are you talking so much about Israel? You're American. Not only is it just, I feel like every human being should be concerned about what's happening in Israel right now, but then you also look like this could very easily become a problem directly for Americans. People say America first. Israel is our most important, valuable ally on a global scale. So America first, you need to have allies, because if, God forbid, if Hamas is able to take out Israel in the way that they want to, you have an entire region, the Middle East, where there's no democracy. They're going to be led by Iran because they're the masterminds. Iran wants their lick back against the United States.
Right.
Russia is not thrilled with us because we're so involved in Ukraine.
Right.
And China has been eyeing Taiwan for a while, and all three of them want to be a global power.
And they want the power to who's going to rebuild up Syria.
Exactly. And you know, they say the enemy of your enemy is my friend. Well, you have Russia, you have Iran and the entire Middle Eastern region outside of Israel, and you have China. Who do they all want to take out as the global power? The United States. Yes. So all three of them against us in the United States. You know, I have a lot of confidence in our military, but I don't know if I have that much to sit here and think that we should be arrogant enough to think that we don't need our most valuable geopolitical ally in Israel. So
you're right. I mean, I don't have as much confidence in our military because of how China has successfully dumbed down our generation with TikTok, right? Mm-hmm. So our men, we know, are becoming more feminine. They're not fighting. They're becoming softer. And everyone is, you know, a marshmallow. We don't know how to fight over here. I mean, we care about hurt feelings. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what we're going to do when it's time to pick up our guns and fight back. I hope that America never goes down. I hope that America stays powerful and strong and beautiful and stays the country that we love. I hope that our young people will be prepared to fight when that fight comes.
Yeah. I remember when I would see the IDF soldiers walking around in Israel, you see these 18, 19-year-old girls who I would have so much more confidence in them fighting than majority of men under 25 here in America.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're out of shape. We are concerned about pronouns. We don't know how to fight. Most of us don't even know how to load a gun. It's like when I look at what Gen Z is and how Gen Z would compete in a war against the likes of Russia, China, and the Middle East, it's terrifying. Yeah, it's terrifying to say the least. Well, I think this was a very important conversation, and I thank you for stopping by here at PragerU today. Is there anything else that you want to share, anything else you want to debunk, or any organizations you think that we should take a look at?
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure being with you. I mean, from Jerusalem to New York and now here in LA.
We traveled the world together all this month.
Yes, we're going to have such a long friendship. I just want to leave people with hope, because what we talked about today it's very heavy. It's very negative. It's not uplifting. I do want people to stay strong and stay encouraged. I want to encourage people to really read and become informed as much as they can, and to follow their hearts and build families. Go out there and get married, have children, build your family, have a harmonious life, make up with your family members. Life is very short. And if there's anything that I learned with being in Israel, especially in war right now, that life is short, tomorrow isn't promised, and I never want to be hung up on small things anymore, because death is near for everyone, you know? Yes. And it sounds so like, Ashira, don't say that, but it's just true. Like, we don't live forever, so live the best life that you can while you have it and be grateful.
Amen. Baruch Hashem, I should say.
Yeah,
I
Baruch
picked up a little Hebrew.
Hashem. Yeah, look at you.
Yeah, thank you. Toda. And lastly, where can everybody find you?
You can find me at Real Ashira Solomon on Instagram, and on Twitter you can find me at Ashira_Solomon.